The crystal towers of Nexus Prime stretched into the purple sky like frozen lightning. Inside the highest tower, 12 beings sat around a table that floated in the center of a vast room. These were the elite, rulers of 847 worlds across the galaxy. Each one believed they were perfect. Each one believed they were better than all other life forms in the universe. Supreme Arbiter. Velthor looked at the hologram floating above the table. It showed a small blue planet on the edge of known space. His 6 eyes glowed with anger as he studied the image. Earth, he said, his voice like grinding metal. The humans call it Earth. The other elite members leaned forward. War Master Kexthon flexed his 4 arms, each one covered in scars from 1,000 battles. What makes these creatures special? They look weak. That is the problem, Velthor replied. They are weak, but they do not act weak. Look at this. The hologram changed. Now it showed dozens of human ships moving between stars. The ships were small and ugly compared to elite vessels, but there were so many of them. In the last 50 cycles, they have built colonies on 200 worlds, Velthor continued. They did not ask permission. They did not bow to our authority. They simply took what they wanted. Science leader Mordak made a sound of disgust. Primitive creatures. Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. Yet they spread like a disease, said Velthor. Their population grows faster than any species we have seen. They build ships from metal scraps and make them work. They turn dead rocks into living worlds in decades, not centuries. Captain Dongwoo Kim stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the stars. He was 34 years old with short black hair and tired eyes. His uniform was clean but showed signs of wear. The ship he commanded, the New Busan, was not beautiful. It was built for work, not for show. Captain, said his communications officer, a young woman named Yujin. We're getting strange readings from the edge of the system. What kind of readings? Dongwoo asked. Energy signatures we've never seen before, big ones. Dongwoo walked to the sensor station. The displays showed massive objects moving through space toward their colony world. The objects were huge, each one larger than any human ship ever built. Get me a connection to Earth Command, Dongwoo ordered. Priority 1. Back on Nexus Prime, the elite continued their meeting. Velthor touched a control and the hologram showed human colonies. Cities full of people working, building, living their lives. To the elite, it looked like chaos. No order, muttered War Master Kexthon. No hierarchy. How do they function? They don't function, said Velthor. They improvise. They adapt. They refuse to follow the natural order of things. Then we eliminate them, said another elite member, her voice like winter wind. As we have eliminated other rebellious species. Velthor nodded slowly. Yes, but this time must be different. Other species begged for mercy when we showed our power. They offered tribute, they submitted, the humans will not. How can you be certain? Asked science leader Mordak. Velthor touched another control. The hologram now showed a human military base. Soldiers trained with weapons that looked primitive compared to elite technology. But the humans moved with purpose and determination. Because they have never learned to submit, Velthor said. In their short history, they have fought wars that lasted years over small pieces of land. They have died for ideas that exist only in their minds. They choose death over slavery again and again. Dr. Hyojin Park worked late in her laboratory, on Earth. She was a quantum physicist specializing in defensive systems. Her lab was cluttered with equipment and half-finished projects. Coffee cups sat on every available surface. The communication device on her desk suddenly came to life. The face of Admiral So Young Choi appeared on the screen. The Admiral looked worried. Hyojin, we need to talk. All deep space monitoring stations are reporting the same thing. Unknown ships, massive ones, moving toward human space. How massive? Hyojin asked, setting down her tools. Each one could hold 1 million soldiers, and there are hundreds of them. Hyojin felt her stomach drop. Are you certain they're hostile? Would you send a fleet that big to deliver flowers? So Young replied, "Start preparing Protocol Defiance. All of it." Protocol Defiance was humanity's worst-case scenario plan. It was designed for a simple situation. What do you do when someone comes to kill every human in the galaxy? The answer was equally simple. Make them pay for it with everything they have. On Nexus Prime, the elite made their final decision. Velthor stood and spread his arms wide. The Purification Armada will launch immediately. 200 dreadnoughts. 50,000 elite warriors from our most deadly species. Complete extinction of humanity within one standard cycle. "What if they surrender?" asked one elite member. Velthor's laugh was like breaking glass. "Then we kill them anyway. They have shown that they do not understand their place in the natural order. They must be removed completely, so that other species see what happens to those who do not submit." The other elite members voiced their agreement. War Master Kexthan slammed his fist on the table. Finally, some proper action. These humans will learn fear before they die. "No," said Velthor quietly. "They will simply die. Fear requires intelligence, and they have proven they lack the intelligence to know when they are beaten." Commander Jin-Ho Lee received the alert on his personal communicator while eating dinner with his family. He was the leader of the Human Colonial Defense Force responsible for protecting human settlements across known space. He read the message twice before standing up. "I have to go," he told his wife. "How bad is it?" she asked. "Bad enough that I might not be coming home," he replied honestly. Within hours, Jin-Ho was in the command center beneath Seoul, looking at tactical displays that showed the approaching threat. His staff worked frantically to coordinate defenses across hundreds of human worlds. "Sir," said his aide, a young officer named Taemin, "the enemy fleet is enormous. Our analysts say it could destroy every ship we have and still have 90% of its forces remaining." Jin-Ho nodded grimly. "Then we'll have to make that 10% count for something." The elite's messenger ship entered human space like a dark omen. It was sleek and beautiful, made from materials that seemed to absorb light. When it reached Earth's orbital stations, it broadcast a message on all frequencies. The message was simple and direct. "Citizens of the species known as humans, you have been judged unworthy of continued existence by the galactic elite. Submit to immediate extermination or face the full might of the Dominion. You have 72 standard hours to comply." President Jae-wook Yang received the message in his office. He was a man in his 50s, with gray hair and laugh lines around his eyes. He had been a teacher before becoming a politician. He read the message 3 times, then started laughing. His aide looked confused. "Sir, are you all right?" "They want us to submit to immediate extermination," Jae-wook said, still chuckling, as if there's a polite way to ask someone to die. Within an hour, President Yang was addressing the United Earth Council. Representatives from every human world watched as he stood at the podium. "Fellow humans," he began, "we have received an ultimatum from something called the Galactic Elite. They want us to die quietly because we didn't ask their permission to exist in this galaxy." He paused. "Well, we didn't ask permission to develop opposable thumbs either, and that worked out pretty well." Some representatives laughed. Others looked terrified. "They have given us 72 hours, Yang continued. "I propose we use that time to send them a reply, not with words, but with actions. Let's show them what happens when you threaten a human's family." Captain Dong-Woo Kim watched the president's speech from his ship's bridge. Around him, his crew prepared for war with grim determination. They all knew they were probably going to die, but they also knew they were going to make it expensive for their enemies. "Captain," Yujin reported, "all human ships are reporting ready status. Protocol Defiance is fully active." Dongwu nodded. In 72 hours, the most powerful military force in the galaxy would arrive to destroy humanity. They expected an easy victory against a primitive species. They were about to discover that humans had never learned how to make anything easy. The 72 hours passed like a held breath. Across human space, families said goodbye to each other. Soldiers checked their weapons one last time. Engineers worked around the clock to turn anything they could find into something that might kill the enemy. Admiral So-Young Choi stood in the command center of Earth's primary defense station. She was 45 years old, a veteran of humanity's expansion into space. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, but her hands showed the calluses of someone who had worked with tools before she commanded fleets. "Status report," she ordered. "All defensive platforms are online," reported her aide, Lieutenant Min Ho. "Every ship in the home fleet is ready. Colony worlds are reporting defensive preparations complete." "So?" Young nodded. She looked at the tactical display showing Earth's defenses. To anyone else, it might have looked impressive. Dozens of armed satellites, hundreds of defensive platforms, a fleet of ships ready to fight. But she knew the truth. Against what was coming, it was like bringing a knife to a gunfight. "Admiral," Min Ho continued, "we're receiving final reports from the outer colonies. New Busan is ready. New Seoul has completed evacuation of civilians. New Incheon," he paused. "New Incheon requests permission to activate the Scorpion Protocol." So-Young closed her eyes. The Scorpion Protocol was humanity's most desperate measure. When a colony knew it was about to fall, they could activate it. Everything on the planet would explode. The colony would die, but so would anyone trying to occupy it. "Granted," she said quietly. On the mining world of New Incheon, Sergeant Hyunwoo Kim received the authorization code. He was a big man with scarred hands and a gentle smile. His job was to keep the mining equipment running. Now his job was to turn that equipment into the largest bomb in human space. "You sure about this, Sarge?" asked one of his men, a young miner named Jun Ho. "The elite want to wipe out every human in the galaxy," Hyunwoo replied as he connected detonation charges to the fusion reactors. "If they want our world, they can have it. All at once." The other miners worked with him. They were not soldiers, but they understood what needed to be done. When the elite came to New Incheon, they would find nothing but death waiting for them. Dr. Hyejin Park worked frantically in her laboratory. She had not slept in 2 days. Her quantum communication network was almost ready. It would allow instant communication between all human forces, no matter how far apart they were. "The entanglement matrix is stable," she told her assistant, Dr. Chang Ho Lee. "We can coordinate every human ship and colony in real time." Chang Ho was younger than Hyejin, with nervous energy and brilliant ideas. "What about the weapon systems? Are they ready?" Hyejin looked at her latest creation. It did not look like much, just a small device that could fit in someone's hand. But it could turn a cargo ship's engine into a weapon that could crack a moon. "Ready as they'll ever be," she said. "Every ship, every station, every piece of human technology is now a potential weapon." On his ship near the edge of human space, Captain Dong-Woo Kim received an update from Earth Command. The elite's fleet would arrive in 6 hours. He looked around his bridge at his crew. They were young, most of them. They had signed up to explore space, not to die in a hopeless war. "Anyone who wants to leave can take a shuttle to the civilian evacuation zone," he announced. "No shame in it, this isn't what you signed up for." Nobody moved. "With respect, Captain," said Yu-Jin from her communication station, "this is exactly what we signed up for. We swore to protect human colonies. That's what we're doing." The other crew members nodded in agreement. Dongwoo felt a surge of pride mixed with sadness. These brave people were about to die because some alien overlords had decided humanity didn't have the right to exist. Fleet Captain Min-Soo Park commanded the defense of the New Seoul system. His fleet consisted of 15 ships, cruisers, destroyers, and a single battleship that was already 20 years old. Against them would come a force that could destroy planets. "Captain," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system." "They're coming." Min-Soo looked at his displays. Dozens of shapes appeared on the sensors, each one larger than his entire fleet combined. The elite's ships were beautiful in a terrible way, smooth curves of impossible materials that seemed to bend light around them. "All ships," Min-Soo broadcast. "Remember Protocol Defiance. We're not here to win. We're here to make them pay. Make every shot count." The elite's purification armada moved through space like a force of nature. Supreme. Arbiter Velthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Around him, his officers prepared for what they expected to be a simple extermination. Energy signatures detected, reported War Master Kexthan. Primitive vessels approaching. 15 ships. 15? Velthor laughed. They send 15 ships against 200? Either they are incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Both, probably, Kexthan replied. Shall we demonstrate our power? Destroy their moon to show them the futility of resistance? Do it. The elite dreadnought's main weapon charged with deadly energy. It was designed to crack the surface of planets. Using it on a moon would turn the rock into vapor and dust. The weapon fired. The moon of New Sol disappeared in a flash of light that could be seen from 3 systems away. The shockwave rippled through space, a clear demonstration of the elite's overwhelming power. On his ship, Fleet Captain Min-Soo Park watched his home system's moon die. His crew stood in shocked silence. Then Min-Soo activated his communications. All human forces, he broadcast. You just saw what they can do to worlds. Remember this moment when they come for your families. The elite expected the human ships to flee or surrender. Instead, something unexpected happened. The 15 human ships accelerated toward the elite fleet. They're attacking, Kexthan said, sounding confused. Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Their ships cannot harm ours. Why are they attacking? The first human ship reached the elite formation. It was a destroyer called the Pusan. Instead of firing its weapons from a safe distance, it rammed directly into an elite dreadnought. Both ships exploded. What? Velthor stared at his displays. They destroyed themselves to kill one of our ships? The second human ship, a cruiser named the Daegu, followed the same pattern. It accelerated at maximum speed toward another elite vessel. Its weapons fired continuously, overloading the elite ship's shields just before impact. Another explosion. Another elite dreadnought destroyed. This is madness, Kexthan said. They're trading their lives for ours. 1 for 1. It's worse than that, Velthor realized. Look at the casualty reports. Each human ship that died killed not just an elite vessel, but everyone aboard it. The elite ships carried thousands of warriors each. The human ships had crews of perhaps 50. But in space combat, numbers meant nothing if you were willing to die to take your enemy with you. Fleet Captain Min-Soo Park's battleship, the Sol, was the last human vessel in the battle. His ship was heavily damaged, its engines failing. Around him, the debris of 14 human ships and 12 elite dreadnoughts drifted in space. Captain, his communications officer reported, the elite are demanding our surrender. Min-Soo looked at his young crew. Most of them were injured. Their ship was dying. They had fought beyond all hope and reason. Send them a message, Min-Soo ordered. What should I tell them, sir? Min-Soo smiled grimly. Tell them that if they want to kill humans, they're going to have to work for it. The Sol accelerated one final time toward the elite flagship. Its weapons fired everything they had left. Missiles, energy beams, even the ship's waste disposal system turned into a kinetic weapon. The elite's shields held, but barely. The Sol crashed into the Eternal Dominion's hull and exploded. Velthor found himself thrown to the deck of his own bridge. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. His beautiful flagship was damaged. Actually damaged by primitive humans. Casualties? He demanded. 12 dreadnoughts destroyed. Kexthan reported, his voice stunned. Over 30,000 elite warriors dead. All human ships destroyed. Velthor stood slowly. 30,000 of his finest warriors dead in exchange for 15 human ships and perhaps 1,000 human lives. By any measure, it should have been a great victory for the elite. So why did it feel like defeat? Continue the advance, Velthor ordered. All ships, maximum speed. We finish this quickly. But across human space, Min-Soo Park's final transmission reached every human settlement. They can kill us, but they can't make it easy. The war was just beginning, and already the elite were learning that conquering humanity would cost them everything they had. The news of the New Sol battle spread through the elite fleet like a disease. Warriors who had conquered hundreds of worlds suddenly found themselves questioning their own invincibility. How could primitive humans destroy 12 dreadnoughts? How could creatures with such inferior technology fight so effectively? Supreme Arbiter Velthor called an emergency council meeting aboard his damaged flagship. The other elite leaders appeared as holograms, their alien faces showing confusion and anger. This was supposed to be simple extermination, growled War Master Kexton. Instead, we lost more ships in one battle than we have in the last century of conquest. Science leader Mordak studied the battle data with his multiple eyes. Their tactics make no sense. They sacrifice themselves for minimal strategic gain. No rational species behaves this way. That's the problem, Velthor replied. They are not rational. They fight like cornered animals, but with the intelligence to make it devastating. The elite had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years using a simple formula: demonstrate overwhelming power, demand submission, crush any resistance. It worked because most species were logical. When faced with certain death, they surrendered. Humans did not surrender. They got angry. Lieutenant Yujin Lee piloted her fighter through the asteroid field that had once been the moon of New Sol. She was 26 years old, with steady hands and quick reflexes. Her ship was small and supposedly obsolete compared to elite technology, but it was fast and it was hard to hit. "Command, this is Ghost Leader," she reported over her quantum communicator. "I have eyes on the elite formation. They're moving toward the new Busan colony." "Copy, Ghost Leader," came Admiral So-Young Choi's voice from Earth. "What's their status?" Yujin studied her sensors. The elite fleet was still massive, but she could see the gaps where human ships had torn holes in their formation. "They're nervous," she reported. "Ships staying close together, maximum shields, lots of sensor sweeps. They're not acting like conquerors anymore. They're acting like they expect an ambush." "Good," So-Young replied. "Give them one." Yujin's squadron consisted of 12 fighters, each one crewed by a single pilot. Against the elite's remaining 188 dreadnoughts, it should have been suicide. But humans had learned to turn suicide into a weapon. All fighters. "This is Ghost Leader," Yujin broadcast. "Remember your target packages. We're not trying to win, we're trying to make them hurt." The human fighters accelerated toward the elite fleet, their engines burning at maximum power. They were too small for the elite's heavy weapons to target, effectively but too dangerous to ignore. On New Incheon, Sergeant Hunwoo Kim made final preparations for the Scorpion Protocol. His mining world would be overrun within hours, but the elite forces coming to occupy it were about to receive a very hot welcome. "Fusion reactor number 1 is ready," reported Junho, one of his miners. The young man's hands shook as he connected the last detonation charge. "Reactor 2 is online," called another miner from across the facility. Hyunwoo checked his list. 15 fusion reactors, 300 mining charges, enough industrial explosive to turn the planet's crust into molten rock. When the elite landed, their occupation forces, they would trigger sensors that would detonate everything at once. "Sarge," Junho asked, "do you think this will actually hurt them?" Hyunwoo looked at the young miner. He was barely out of school, should have been dating girls and worrying about his career. Instead, he was preparing to die to kill aliens who wanted to exterminate his species. "Son," Hyunwoo said gently, "they're about to land 100,000 soldiers on this rock. When those reactors blow, there won't be anything left but radioactive dust for 1,000 kilometers in every direction." "That's not what I meant," Junho said quietly. "I mean, will it hurt them enough to matter? Are we just wasting our lives?" Hyunwoo considered the question seriously. "Every elite soldier who dies here is one that can't kill human civilians somewhere else. Every ship they lose to us is one that can't bomb human colonies. We're buying time for our families to escape or prepare." He put a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Besides, if we're going to die anyway, might as well take some of the bastards with us." The elite advance force reached New Incheon 6 hours later. They expected light resistance from primitive miners and farmers. Instead, they found a world that had been turned into the galaxy's largest bomb. The first elite transport ship landed near the main mining complex. Soldiers poured out of it, ready to begin the systematic extermination of human civilians. Motion. Sensors detected their movement and sent a signal to Yunwu's detonation system. The explosion was visible from orbit. 15 fusion reactors detonated simultaneously, followed by hundreds of smaller charges placed throughout the colony. The blast turned 300 square kilometers of planet surface into a crater of melted rock and radioactive fire. The elite advance force, 20 transport ships and 50,000 soldiers, simply ceased to exist. On the Eternal Dominion, War Master Kexthan stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. The entire landing force is gone. The humans, they destroyed their own world. Impossible, Velthor said, but he was looking at the same data. Where New Inchin had been, there was now just a glowing scar on the planet's surface. They killed themselves to kill us, Kexthan continued, his voice hollow. They turned their own world into a weapon. Science leader Mordak's hologram flickered as he processed the information. This behavior violates every principle of survival. No species deliberately destroys its own habitat. Humans do, Velthor realized. They would rather die than submit. They would rather see their worlds burn than let us have them. The implications were terrifying. The elite had planned to conquer human worlds, use their resources, enslave their populations. But if every human world was rigged to explode, if every human colony would choose death over slavery. How many more worlds are prepared like this? Kexthan asked. Velthor had no answer. Lieutenant Eugene Lee's fighter squadron reached the elite formation, just as news of New Inchin's destruction spread through their communications. The alien ships seemed to hesitate, their perfect formations wavering. They're scared, Eugene realized. She could see it in the way the elite ships moved, the way they clustered together for protection. These beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia were learning what fear felt like. Ghost Squadron, engage, she ordered. The human fighters dove into the elite formation like angry wasps. Their weapons were primitive compared to elite technology, but they were designed by humans who understood that sometimes quantity had a quality all its own. Eugene's fighter carried 48 missiles, each one small and relatively weak. But they were fast and they were smart. Her ship's computer had analyzed elite shield frequencies during the New Sol battle. Her missiles were programmed to exploit those weaknesses. She fired everything she had at the nearest elite dreadnought. The missiles swarmed around the massive ship like angry insects, each one finding a slightly different approach vector. The elite shields held, but barely. Warning lights flashed across the alien bridge as power systems strained to maintain protection. Shields at 60%, reported an elite officer. How is this possible? Around Eugene, her squadron mates did the same thing. 12 human fighters fired over 500 missiles at the elite formation. The aliens' advanced shields flickered and strained under the assault. Then Eugene did something that elite tactical computers had never predicted. Instead of retreating to rearm, she flew her fighter directly at the dreadnought's bridge. "For New Sol!" she shouted over the communication channel. Her fighter crashed through the elite ship's weakened shields and exploded against its hull. The blast tore a hole in the dreadnought's armor, causing massive decompression. Hundreds of elite warriors died in seconds. 11 more human fighters followed her example. 11 more elite ships suffered critical damage or destruction. War Master Kexthan watched in horror as human pilots deliberately crashed their ships into his forces. "They're all insane," he whispered. "Every single one of them is insane." "No," Velthor said quietly. "They're desperate. There's a difference." But even as he said it, he wondered if there really was a difference anymore. Desperate beings could be negotiated with, reasoned with, eventually defeated. Insane beings were unpredictable, dangerous in ways that even the elite's vast experience couldn't prepare them for. Captain Dongwoo Kim received reports of the battles from his position at the edge of human space. New Sol, 12 elite dreadnoughts destroyed in exchange for 15 human ships. New Inchin, 50,000 elite soldiers dead in exchange for one human colony. The fighter attacks, dozens of elite ships damaged or destroyed in exchange for 12 human pilots. The mathematics were becoming clear. Humans, were killing elite forces at a ratio of roughly 20-1. But the elite still had massive numerical superiority. The question was whether they would have the will to continue paying such a price. Captain, Yujin at the communication station reported, "We're receiving new orders from Earth Command." "What are our orders?" Dongwu asked. "Prepare for fallback. To the Titan line. All outer colonies are implementing Scorpion Protocol. We're going to make them fight for every world." Dongwu nodded grimly. The Titan line was humanity's last major defensive position before Earth itself. If they fell back, 3 months had passed since the elite began their campaign to exterminate humanity. What was supposed to be a simple demonstration of power had become a nightmare that haunted every elite commander. The galaxy watched in shock as the invincible rulers of space bled themselves dry against a species they had dismissed as primitive. Supreme. Arbiter Velthor stood in the ruins of what had once been his command center aboard the Eternal Dominion. His flagship had been damaged so many times that repairs could barely keep up with the destruction. Around him, his staff worked with the desperate efficiency of beings who knew they were losing a war they should have won easily. "Status report," Velthor demanded. War Master Kexthon looked exhausted. His forearms, once powerful symbols of elite superiority, now showed the tremors of constant stress. 68 dreadnoughts lost, over 400,000 elite warriors dead. The Kethmeran forces are down to 12% of original strength. Velthor felt his 6 eyes dim with grief and rage. The Kethmeran were his own species, the finest warriors in the galaxy. They had been 40 million strong when this war began. Now they numbered barely 4 million, and most of those were wounded or traumatized. "What about human casualties?" he asked, though he already knew the answer would bring no comfort. "Difficult to determine precisely," Kexthon replied. "They have lost approximately 90% of their military forces and 40% of their civilian population. But they keep fighting," Velthor finished. "The survivors fight harder than the ones who died." This was the nightmare the elite faced. Every human colony they destroyed became a lesson for the next one. Every human ship they killed took more elite vessels with it. The humans were learning, adapting, becoming more dangerous even as their numbers decreased. Commander Yoonji Kim crouched in the rubble of what had once been New Daegu Colony. She was 31 years old, with short black hair and scars across her face from a battle 3 weeks earlier. Around her, 24 human survivors prepared for their final assault. They were not soldiers. Most of them had been farmers, teachers, shop owners before the elite came. Now they were guerrilla fighters, using salvaged weapons and homemade explosives to make the elite's occupation of their world as costly as possible. "The elite garrison has 8,000 soldiers," Yoonji told her team. "Their base is protected by energy shields and automated defenses. By any reasonable measure, we should run and hide." Her fighters looked at her with grim determination. They knew what she was going to say next. "But we're not reasonable people," Yoonji continued. "We're humans, and humans have never been good at knowing when we're beaten." She gestured to the device at the center of their hiding place. It looked like a normal mining charge, the kind used to break up asteroids. But Dr. Chang Ho Lee's modifications had turned it into something much more dangerous. "The colony's fusion reactor is still intact," Yoonji explained. "This charge will cause a cascade failure. The explosion will destroy everything within 50 kilometers. "Including us," said one of her fighters, a young man named Jae-ho, who had taught children before the war. "Including us," Yoonji confirmed, "but also including every elite soldier on this world." The team spent the next 6 hours infiltrating the elite base. They moved through drainage tunnels and maintenance shafts, using their knowledge of human construction to find paths the aliens had never considered. The elite had superior technology, but humans had built these colonies. They knew every pipe, every cable, every hidden access. 2 hours after midnight, Yoonji and her team reached the reactor core. Elite guards patrolled the area, but they were looking for military attacks, not desperate civilians willing to die for revenge. Yoonji placed the modified mining charge against the reactor's primary containment unit. She set the timer for 10 minutes, enough time for her team to escape if they chose to run. Nobody ran. For New Daegu, she whispered, and activated the charge. The explosion tore the colony apart from within. The fusion reactor's cascade failure turned the planet's crust into molten glass. 8,000 elite soldiers died instantly, along with Yunji and her 24 fighters. But across human space, recordings of Yunji's final transmission reached every surviving human settlement. You wanted our worlds? Have them. All at once. Dr. Chang Ho Lee worked frantically in his hidden laboratory on the asteroid mining station of New Guangzhou. He was younger than most of the resistance leaders, barely 30, but his genius with technology had made him invaluable to humanity's survival. His latest project surrounded him, hundreds of small devices that looked like ordinary tools and equipment. Communicators, mining lasers, cargo loaders, even food processors. But each one had been modified to serve a deadly purpose when activated remotely. The quantum network is complete, he reported to Admiral So Young Choi over the encrypted channel. Every piece of human technology in the galaxy is now connected. When the elite try to use our equipment, it becomes a weapon, So Young finished. How many devices are we talking about? Chang Ho smiled grimly. Millions. Every human colony. Every ship, every base. The elite have been capturing our equipment and trying to reverse engineer it. They have no idea that everything they've taken is designed to explode when I send the activation signal. It was humanity's ultimate booby trap. The elite thought they were studying primitive human technology. In reality, they were surrounding themselves with bombs that would activate at Chang Ho's command. Captain Su Jin Park commanded the defense of Earth's outer system aboard her ship, the Incheon. She was one of the few remaining human naval officers still alive, and her ship was a patchwork of salvaged parts and desperate repairs. Captain, her communications officer reported, long-range sensors are detecting elite fleet movement. They're massing for a final assault on Earth. Su-Jin studied the tactical display. Over 100 elite dreadnoughts were forming up at the edge of the solar system. It was still a massive force, but she remembered when the elite had started, with 200 ships. How many of our ships are left, she asked. 17 operational vessels in the home fleet, her tactical officer replied, plus whatever civilian ships have been converted for combat. 17 ships against 100. Those were impossible odds by any measure. But humans had been facing impossible odds for months. They had learned to make impossible odds work for them. Send a message to all human forces, Su-Jin ordered. Tell them Earth's children are coming home, and we're bringing hell with us. Supreme Arbiter Velthor prepared for what he hoped would be the final battle of the war. His remaining forces were exhausted, traumatized, and barely holding together, but they were still superior to anything the humans could field. Once we destroy their homeworld, the humans will have no choice but to surrender, he told his commanders. No species can survive the loss of their original planet. War Master Kexton looked doubtful. These humans have already proven they prefer death to surrender. What makes you think destroying Earth will change that? Because they're still a young species, Velthor replied. They lack the wisdom that comes with age. When they see the ashes of their homeworld, they will understand the futility of further resistance. But even as he said it, Velthor wondered if he truly believed his own words. The humans had already shown they would destroy their own worlds rather than let the elite claim them. What would they do when faced with the destruction of Earth itself? The elite fleet began its final advance toward humanity's home system. As they moved through space, they passed the debris of dozens of previous battles. The wreckage of human and elite ships drifted together in silent testament to the war's terrible cost. On one of the elite dreadnoughts, a young officer named Zixthar stared out at the debris field. He was barely an adult by elite standards, conscripted into the war when casualties began mounting beyond acceptable levels. Commander, he asked his superior, why are we doing this? The humans posed no threat to us before we attacked them. They were content to live on their own worlds in their own space. The commander, an older elite named Vorketh, looked at the young officer with tired eyes. Because they did not ask permission, because they did not acknowledge our authority, because they acted as if they were our equals. But are we not proving that they are our equals? Sixthar asked quietly. They have killed more of us than any species in galactic history. They fight with courage and skill. Perhaps they deserve to exist. Vorketh was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that would have been unthinkable at the beginning of the war. Perhaps they do, but it is too late now. We have gone too far to stop. Either they die, or we do. Dr. Chang Ho Lee activated his quantum network as the elite fleet approached Earth. Across the galaxy, millions of pieces of human technology that the elite had captured suddenly became active. Mining equipment exploded in elite research facilities. Captured human computers overloaded power systems on alien ships. Even simple tools became deadly weapons in elite hands. The explosions were not large individually, but there were so many of them. Elite bases throughout the galaxy suddenly found themselves under attack from within. Ships suffered critical system failures as their captured human techno. Earth hung in space like a blue marble, seemingly peaceful and defenseless. But appearances were deceiving. Humanity's home world had been transformed into the most dangerous place in the galaxy. Every satellite was armed. Every space station was a fortress. Every piece of orbital debris had been turned into a weapon. Admiral So Young Choi stood on the bridge of her flagship, the sole defender, watching the elite fleet approach. Her ship was a miracle of human engineering, built from the wreckage of destroyed vessels, powered by jury-rigged reactors and armed with weapons that should not have been possible to create. Status of the home fleet, she ordered. 17 operational warships, her aide reported, plus 43 converted civilian vessels, mining ships, cargo haulers, even passenger liners armed with whatever weapons we could mount on them. So Young nodded. 60 ships against 120 elite dreadnoughts. The odds were worse than impossible, but humans had stopped paying attention to odds months ago. What about the civilian population? She asked. Evacuation of non-essential personnel is complete. Everyone remaining is a volunteer. That was the most remarkable thing about Earth's defense. When faced with certain death, millions of humans had chosen to stay and fight rather than flee to safety. Teachers had become gunners. Doctors had become engineers. Children too young to fight had become messengers carrying ammunition to the front lines. Captain Ji-wook Kim piloted his ship through the outer system, making final preparations for humanity's last stand. His vessel, the Defiant Hope, was built entirely from salvaged elite technology. Captured weapons, stolen armor plating, and engines torn from destroyed alien ships. It was a symbol of human determination, taking the enemy's own tools and turning them against their makers. "Captain," his navigator called out, "the elite fleet is entering weapons range." Ji-wook looked at his crew. They were all volunteers, all survivors of previous battles. They knew they were about to die, but their faces showed only determination. "Remember the plan," he told them. "We're not trying to win this battle. We're trying to make them pay for winning it." Supreme Arbiter Velthor watched Earth grow larger on his displays. The blue world looked so small, so insignificant. How had this tiny planet produced a species that had brought the mighty elite to their knees? His fleet was a shadow of what it had been. 120 ships instead of 200. Barely 300,000 warriors instead of 1,000,000. The Kethamiran were nearly extinct. The proud Zephytari warrior caste had been reduced to a handful of survivors. "Begin the bombardment," he ordered. "Turn their world to ash." But as the elite weapons charged, something unexpected happened. Earth's orbital platforms began moving. Thousands of satellites, space stations, and defensive platforms repositioned themselves with perfect coordination. "Impossible." "War Master," Kexthun breathed. "How are they controlling so many objects simultaneously?" Dr. Hyojin Park's quantum communication network had evolved beyond simple messaging. Every piece of human technology around Earth was now part of a single massive intelligence, coordinated by human operators, but functioning as one enormous weapon system. The elite fired their planet-killing weapons at Earth, expecting to see the blue world crack and burn. Instead, Their energy beams struck layers of defensive shields that should not have existed. The human orbital platforms had linked their power systems together, creating a protective barrier around their home world. Their defenses are holding, Kexthun reported in shock. How is this possible? Velthor stared at the display. Human technology was primitive, inferior to elite science in every way. But the humans had done something the elite had never attempted. They had made their entire civilization work together as a single organism. All ships, maximum firepower, Velthor commanded. Concentrate on breaking their orbital defenses. The elite fleet poured devastating energy into Earth's protective network. Human platforms exploded by the dozens, their crews dying at their posts. But for every platform that died, 2 more moved to fill the gap. Admiral So-Young Choi watched her people die and felt pride mixed with terrible sadness. These were not soldiers, most of them. They were ordinary people who had chosen to stand between their world and annihilation. Admiral, her communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the elite flagship. Put it through, Supreme Arbiter. Velthor's alien face appeared on her screen. His 6 eyes glowed with frustration and something that might have been respect. Human Commander, Velthor said, your people have fought bravely, but this ends now. Surrender, and we will make their deaths quick. So-Young looked at the alien ruler who had come to exterminate her species. You still don't understand, do you? Humans don't surrender. We die fighting or we don't die at all. Then you choose extinction, Velthor replied. No, So-Young said calmly. We choose to take you with us. She cut the transmission and activated the final phase of Earth's defense. Every remaining human ship began accelerating toward the elite fleet, not to engage in conventional battle, but to ram the enemy vessels at maximum speed. Captain Ji-Wook Kim's ship was the first to reach the elite formation. The Defiant Hope crashed into an elite dreadnought with the force of a small meteor. Both ships exploded in a ball of plasma that could be seen from Earth's surface. For humanity, came the cry from a dozen human ships as they followed Ji-Wook's example. The elite fleet found itself under attack by kamikaze pilots, who turned their vessels into guided missiles. Human ships barely a tenth the size of elite dreadnoughts were destroying the massive alien vessels through pure suicidal courage. War Master Kexthun watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart by human desperation. They're all insane, he whispered. Every one of them chooses death over defeat. Not insane, Velthor corrected, finally understanding the truth that had eluded him throughout the war. Committed. They believe in something more important than their own lives. A human cargo hauler, the New Pusan, rammed Kexthun's own dreadnought. The explosion cracked the alien ship's hull and sent it spinning out of control. Kexthun died with the realization that he had never believed in anything strongly enough to die for it. On Earth's surface, General In-Ho Park coordinated the planet's final defenses. He was 55 years old, a career soldier who had fought in humanity's expansion wars. He stood in a command center built deep beneath Seoul, watching displays that showed the battle raging in orbit above. Sir, one of his officers reported, the orbital platforms are failing. Elite bombardment is getting through. In-Ho nodded grimly. He had expected this. Earth's defenses were impressive, but they could not hold forever against such overwhelming firepower. Activate the Prometheus protocol, he ordered. His staff exchanged worried glances. The Prometheus protocol was humanity's most desperate measure, turning Earth itself into a weapon. If the elite wanted to destroy humanity's homeworld, they would have to survive the process. Sir, his aide said quietly, Prometheus will render large portions of Earth uninhabitable. The casualties will be less than total extinction, In-Ho finished. Do it. Across Earth's surface, massive fusion reactors that had been built in secret began activating. They were designed to look like industrial facilities, but their true purpose was much more destructive. When they reached critical mass, they would turn Earth's crust into a weapon capable of destroying any ship in orbit. Supreme Arbiter Velthor felt the Eternal Dominion shudder as another human ship rammed his defenses. His beautiful flagship was falling apart around him, its hull cracked, its weapons failing. "Fleet status," he demanded. 67 ships operational, came the reply. "The humans have destroyed over half our remaining forces." Velthor stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The humans had fewer than 20 ships left, but they had inflicted devastating casualties on the elite fleet. How was such a thing possible? "Sir," his sensor officer called out. "Massive energy readings from the planet's surface. They're doing something to their world." On Earth, General In-Ho Park watched the final preparations for humanity's ultimate weapon. If the elite wanted to kill every human in the galaxy, they would have to survive humanity's final act of defiance. "Prometheus reactors at 90%, his aide reported. "Critical mass in 60 seconds. In-Ho activated his communication system one final time. His transmission reached every human ship, every human settlement, every human survivor across the galaxy. "This is Earth command to all human forces," he said calmly. "If we're going to die today, we're going to die as humans. Free, defiant, and unbroken. Make them remember us." The Prometheus reactors reached critical mass, Earth's surface, erupted in a chain of explosions that turned continents into weapons. The energy release was visible from neighboring star systems. Humanity's homeworld transforming itself into a supernova of rage and defiance. The elite fleet, caught in orbit above the exploding planet, faced the final lesson in human determination. When cornered, humans don't just fight back. They take everything with them. Supreme Arbiter Velthor's last thought, as his flagship was consumed by the dying fires of humanity's home world, was a simple recognition of truth. He had tried to exterminate the wrong species. The explosion of Earth could be seen from 3 star systems away. Humanity's homeworld died in flames that burned brighter than most suns, taking with it the last remnants of the elite's purification armada. Where once there had been a blue planet teeming with life, now there was only an expanding cloud of radioactive debris and the twisted wreckage of alien warships. In the silence that followed, one small object drifted through the ruins of the solar system. It was an escape pod, barely intact, containing the last surviving member of the galaxy's former ruling class. Supreme Arbiter Velthor floated in his damaged pod, staring out at the destruction through cracked viewing ports. His 6 eyes, once bright with the certainty of elite superiority, now reflected only shock and growing understanding. The mighty dominion that had ruled 847 worlds for millennia was gone, destroyed by a species they had dismissed as primitive animals. 3 days passed before a human rescue ship found his pod, drifting near the outer edge of what had once been Earth's orbit. The ship was small and battered, clearly a civilian vessel that had been hastily converted for military use. When the airlock opened, Velthor expected to face armed soldiers ready to execute him. Instead, he met Dr. Hai-Jin Park. She was a small woman with tired eyes and gentle hands. She wore a simple medical uniform and carried a basic scanner. When she saw Velthor's injuries, her first instinct was not revenge, but healing. "You're hurt," she said in accented galactic standard, kneeling beside his pod. "Let me help you." Velthor stared at her in confusion. "I am your enemy. I came to destroy every human in the galaxy." "I know," Hai-Jin replied, running her scanner over his wounds. "But you're also injured and alone. Right now, that's what matters." She helped him to the ship's small medical bay where she began treating his injuries with the same care she would show any patient. Her hands were steady and professional as she worked, showing no sign of the hatred or anger Velthor expected. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why save me? Why heal me? You know what I tried to do?" Hai-Jin paused in her work and looked at him directly. "Because that's what humans do. We fight like hell when threatened, but we don't continue fighting when the threat is over. You're not a threat anymore. You're just alone and hurt." President Jae-wook Yang was waiting when the rescue ship docked at New Jeju Station, one of the few human settlements to survive the war. He was older now, his hair completely gray, his face lined with the stress of leading his species through near extinction. but his eyes still held the warmth and humor that had made him beloved by his people. The station was crowded with human survivors, perhaps 50,000 people out of the billions who had lived before the war began. They looked at Velthor with curiosity rather than hatred, these remnants of a nearly extinct species. "So you're the last of the elite," Yang said, studying the alien ruler. "I'm President Yang. Welcome to what's left of humanity." Velthor expected mockery, torture, or execution. Instead, Yang offered him a chair and a cup of what humans called coffee. "I don't understand," Velthor said, accepting the warm drink with trembling hands. "You should kill me. I ordered the extermination of your entire species." "Yes, you did," Yang agreed calmly. "And in response, we destroyed your civilization. I'd say we're even." Over the following weeks, Velthor found himself living among the human survivors as something between a guest and a prisoner. They gave him quarters in their station, fed him meals, even provided him with books to read about human history and culture. It was the books that began to change his understanding. He read about human wars, expecting to find tales of conquest and domination like those that filled elite history. Instead, he found stories of people fighting for freedom, for justice, for the right to exist without oppression. He read about humans who had died to protect strangers, who had sacrificed everything to defend abstract concepts like equality and dignity. "Your species is strange," he told Yang during one of their regular conversations. "You fight wars over ideas that cannot be seen or touched. Those ideas are the most real things in the universe." Yang replied, "They're what separate intelligent beings from clever animals." Word of humanity's victory spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had been subjects of the elite for thousands of years suddenly found themselves free. Without the elite's massive fleets and armies to enforce order, the old dominion began to collapse. But instead of the chaos that everyone expected, something remarkable happened. Human survivors began reaching out to the former subject species, not as conquerors but as helpers. Captain Dongwoo Kim, one of the few human military officers to survive the war, found himself commanding refugee ships rather than warships. His vessel, hastily renamed the New Hope, carried displaced aliens to safe worlds where they could start over. "Why are you helping us?" asked a Zelanti refugee, one of the species that had served the elite for centuries. "We never helped you when the elite tried to destroy your kind." Dongwoo considered the question while watching alien families board his ship. "Because someone needs to help," he said finally. "And we're the ones who are here." Admiral So Young Choi, who had somehow survived the destruction of Earth, established the Galactic Reconstruction Alliance from a converted asteroid mining station. The organization's mission was simple: help the galaxy rebuild without the elite's oppressive hierarchy. "We're not trying to replace the elite," she explained to delegates from dozens of former subject species. "We're trying to make sure no one ever replaces them." The alliance operated on principles that seemed revolutionary to species accustomed to elite rule. Decisions were made by consensus rather than decree. Resources were shared rather than hoarded. Most shocking of all, membership was voluntary and could be revoked at any time. Velthor watched these developments with growing amazement. Every expectation he had about human nature was being challenged. He had expected them to become conquerors like the elite before them. Instead, they became something the galaxy had never seen: liberators who refused to rule what they had freed. "Don't understand your species," he told Dr. Hai-Jin Park during one of his medical checkups. "You had the opportunity to rule the galaxy. The elite are gone, our armies destroyed, our fleet scattered. You could have taken everything." "What would we do with everything?" Hai-Jin asked, checking his healing injuries. "Rule over species that hate us? Spend our lives fighting rebellions and maintaining control? That's not freedom, that's just a different kind of prison." "But you could have forced peace, imposed order." "Forced peace isn't peace," she replied. "It's just delayed. War. Real peace has to be chosen, not imposed." Months passed, and the galaxy slowly adapted to life without the elite. Trade resumed between worlds that had been isolated for centuries. Art and music began to flourish as species were free to express themselves without fear. Scientific discoveries accelerated as researchers were no longer bound by elite restrictions on knowledge. Through it all, the human survivors worked tirelessly to help the reconstruction. They shared their technology freely, taught other species the principles of democratic government, and established schools where the children of different worlds could learn together. Velthor found himself assigned to work in one of these schools, teaching galactic history to young beings from a dozen different species. It was humbling work for someone who had once ruled the galaxy, but he discovered he had a talent for it. Teacher Velthor asked a young human student named Minji, "Why did the elite think they were better than everyone else?" Velthor paused, considering how to explain something he was only beginning to understand himself. "Because we were afraid," he said finally. "We were afraid that if we weren't the strongest, if we weren't in control, then someone else would control us. We confused power with safety. But the humans defeated you without trying to control anyone," observed a Zelanti student. "Yes," Velthor agreed. "They taught us that true strength comes from helping others become strong, not from keeping them weak." 5 years after the end of the war, Velthor stood in the garden of New Eden Colony, tending to vegetables that would feed refugee families. His hands, once used only to give orders that meant life or death for billions, now worked in soil and sunlight. President Yang found him there, watering tomato plants with the careful attention of someone who had learned to value growing things over destroying them. "Any regrets?" Yang asked, sitting on a simple wooden bench beside the garden. Velthor considered the question while watching children from a dozen different species play together in the distance. These were the children of the future galaxy, beings who would grow up never knowing the fear and oppression that had defined life under elite rule. "Only one," Velthor said finally. "I regret that it took the near extinction of your species to teach mine the difference between ruling and leading." "Maybe that's a lesson every species has to learn for themselves," Yang suggested. "The elite just learned it the hard way." As the two former enemies sat together in the peaceful garden, the galaxy continued its slow healing around them. The elite's empire was gone, destroyed by a species they had underestimated in every possible way. But from its ashes had grown something better, a galaxy where strength was measured not by the ability to destroy but by the choice to create.